Hi, welcome back. We're on lesson 22 of the VQ workbook number 1. Number 1 is altruistic donation. Altruistic is the unselfishly being concerned for others. It means you care about other people because the root here is alter. Alter is an important root. Please write that down and memorize alter as other. The it is the root that means other. The English word alter means to change. So they're spelled the same, but when I say alter, I'm usually talking about the root meaning other. And that is the root found in the English word alter or alteration, which is also the noun for change, or the alternative, which is another choice, the other choice that you can go to. The noun for altruistic is altruism, and the person who does this is an altruist. So when we talked about the philanthropist gives donations. So by definition, he is an altruistic person. Capricious storm. Capricious means being fickle or incalculable, as in it's hard to predict what that person is going to do or what that storm is going to do because the storm is being very fickle. It's on, off, it's here, it's there. So when you watch the weather report, they often talk about the capricious storm. The noun that it's based on is caprice. Caprice is being whimsical, kind of acting on whim based on whatever you feel like doing at the time. And that's a lot of children, a lot of little children behave that way. So we say that they're being capricious. We can talk about capricious winds, or possibly something like Lady Luck is a capricious mother. And that's just some expression. It means that luck in life is very capricious. You can't really rely on it. Detrimental to your health. Something detrimental, of course, like cigarettes, is very harmful or damaging to your health. So we can talk about the detrimental effects of a lot of different things. We can talk about the detrimental effects of pollution, or possibly the factory's waste was detrimental to the local environment. So anything that is harmful to the people is detrimental. Ephemeral life. Short lived or fleeting is the definition. It means it's not going to last. It's very short lived. Time is limited. Our life is ephemeral because we're here for a temporary time and it's really nothing compared to, say, the billions of years that the Earth has been around. So that our life is very ephemeral. We can also talk about ephemeral pleasures. Where you go, say, you go to Disneyland and you enjoy the rides, but it's very short lived. That's an ephemeral pleasure. Ephemeral fever that you have, but it's only temporary. It goes away after a short time. Hackneyed plot. Hackneyed plot is defined as commonplace or trite, and if you look up either of those words, it'll probably tell you that it means hackneyed. So you kind of go back and forth without learning really what it means. It means that you're lacking in freshness or originality. And that means you're saying things that have been said many times before. There's nothing original about what you're saying. And the idea of an hackneyed plot is a movie plot. You go to see a movie, say something like Avengers. Avengers, there's so many Avengers movie coming out. It's like one every year or so, right? Basically, yeah, the plot is pretty much the same. You got some bad guy showing up, and the Avengers get together. They have to fight against the bad guy, defeat the bad guy, so on. The plot is pretty hackneyed. It's very trite. It's kind of old, and nothing fresh and new in that. So we can talk about hackneyed slogans that people say or businesses say that seems kind of old and stale. Or you can talk about hackneyed stereotypes about certain groups of people that seems very generic and nothing new or creative there. Innovation. Innovation in technology. The innovation is any kind of change or introduction of something new. And the idea of new is important there because the prefix is in, meaning in, and the root is nova. Nova means new. And that is something you want to remember. Please make note of it. And so innovation has to be something new, a new change, not just any change. So we see the root nova in novel, not the book novel that you read, but when you say that's a novel idea or the novelty of something, it's the newness of that thing. We also see it in the word renovation. When you renovate a building, then you are making that house new again. Negate. Negate the argument. That means to cancel out or to nullify or to deny. Of course, as you guessed, it is related to the word negative, right? To make something negative is to make it opposite. So to negate the argument is basically saying the opposite of someone's argument to cancel out that person's argument by saying the opposite or proving or disproving the other person's argument. So we generally talk about negating an equation, right? If it's you have an equation and your teacher tells you, well, let's put negative signs in front of each term, and if we negate the entire thing on both sides, then it'll stay the same. That's negating the equation. We can also say alcohol can negate the effects of some medicine. What does that mean? You take medicine for the effects and then you drink some alcohol. That alcohol can actually cancel out the effect of the medicine. So you end up as if you didn't even take the medicine. That's the negating effects. Prodigious. Prodigious strength. Prodigious strength is marvelous, enormous strength. It is like being a prodigy. Prodigy is something wondrous, like a genius child is called a child prodigy, something of a wonder. And we could use that same idea in a lot of other situations when you have something like strength. In the picture here, that's the classic picture of Samson in the Old Testament, who is strong enough to push the pillars of the stadium and bring the whole stadium down. And that is really prodigious strength. It's not common human strength. Magicians perform the prodigious feats. Feats are acts, actions. So we're talking about magicians on stage doing things that seem humanly impossible. A prodigious supply of canned food. If you're setting up a bunker for a disaster, then in your shelter you might stock it with maybe 5 years worth of canned food. Then that will be a prodigious supply of canned food. Ruthless. Ruthless murderer. Pitiless and cruel. Yeah, I know the guy in the picture doesn't seem so ruthless, but hey, who knows? Sometimes the more ruthless they are, they might come to you smiling like that. Ruthless means that you have no ruth. Ruth is compassion or remorse. It's related to the word rue. When you hear somebody say, hey, you will rue this day, that means you will regret this day when you treated me this way. You will regret it. And that's ruth, regretting kind of, that kind of feeling, or feeling compassion for another person. So if you are ruthless, then you feel no compassion for anybody else, and that's why you're a murderer. I think by definition, a murderer has to be ruthless. The opposite would be ruthful. You could be ruthful, and that would be you're full of compassion. You're a very compassionate person, or you're being very sorrowful. You're full of rue, full of regret. Torpor. Torpor of a hibernating bear. Torpor is lethargy, sluggishness, or dormancy. Lethargy is what you feel after a heavy meal. You're feeling kind of tired and drowsy. You don't want to move. You don't want to do anything. That's lethargy. That's the sluggishness. Dormancy, being dormant, means you're sleeping. And of course, a hibernating bear is sleeping. And if you wake it up during the winter, then it would feel very lethargic, very slow. It would be feeling torpor. And so torpor is the noun form of torpid. Torpid is the adjective, just the basis of this word. A sample sentence might look something like this. The news aroused him from his torpor. His torpor was him being just kind of lazy and not really feeling anything. And then he heard some news, something good or bad, whatever it was, it excited him or it got his attention and he got up out of his torpor. All right, thanks for watching. I'll see you in the next video.